the Seconds Out live intro taken me for surprise, but hopefully the Seconds Out live this week hadn't taken you by surprise either, as we had a little bit of a late start just getting everything involved behind the scenes, but we're here nonetheless to deliver you another edition of Seconds Out Live, your weekly fix of the rundown and previews of boxing content coming up in the world of boxing, as well as this week, a little bit of shift to the topic of discussion to go through, and that is in the wake of Anthony Joshua's comments, or at least Eddie Hearn's comments about the future of Anthony Joshua. We're here to discuss today the likely options of who might get those fights left on whatever is left on the timeline of Anthony Joshua's career. We're going to assess who those fighters might be, what the likelihood is, and the potential of success for the former unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua, whomever would be the one to stand in his opposite corner. Without, of course, this wouldn't happen, of course, without your contributions, whether it be from a question in the chat, your comments in the chat too, a like button, subscribe button as well. All goes a very long way. And should you not be listening to this live, you can also leave a comment in the chat as well too, in the comment section, and we will of course get to as many of them as we can and respond to as many of them we can too in the week after this episode. So please do feel free to get them in, and I'll get to those comments routinely throughout the show. So of course, when it comes to Anthony Joshua and that discussion, there's only been one name that's recurred throughout the years as to who people want to see him fight in, or be in the opposite corner to him, and that is, of course, Tyson Fury. The current state of play is that Tyson Fury is retired. But is he retired? We've seen Tyson Fury come out of retirement a number of times to reclaim thrones, reclaim championships, reclaim opportunities, take on big fights, take on Deontay Wilder, which was a huge endeavor, one that many thought that he might not come out of the winning end of, and he did at the second time of asking on the judges' scorecards. But for many people, he did win the first fight, but it was a tightrope walk that ended with him. It was a tightrope walk, sorry, that ended with him getting a draw after climbing off the canvas so infamously or famously, however you want to put it, um, and to see himself through to the final bell. Now, Tyson Fury, the possibility that that fight does happen, I think Anthony Joshua seems to be all for it. When I spoke to him in Riyadh off of the back of Canelo versus William Skull, he said, "Look, I'm here. I'm ready." He might have an injury to work through. He might have the need to have surgery and get back and nurse himself a little bit to full health, but he's ready for those opportunities. He's ready for that big fight, and he's ready for the opportunity against Tyson Fury. But Tyson Fury isn't at the table right now because he's retired. We're currently seeing him out and about in a kilt, looking like he's filming something. I believe it's for his Netflix series. It's certainly not for a boxing fight. That seems to be the case. He's been out in the public eye in Soccer Aid, I believe, was the manager, and maybe dropped a swear word or two that he shouldn't have done. But Tyson's mind doesn't seem to be fixed right now to boxing, so it would seem that Tyson Fury and the option for that fight to happen next, or be one of the two fights, isn't viable. But if it was, how do you see the fight playing out? Because I would suggest that right now, even off of the back of Tyson Fury's defeat to Alexander Usyk, it would seem that Tyson would still be the favorite in the fight, given the way that Anthony Joshua ended his last fight against Daniel Dubois. Let's get a poll up, Vinny, in the chat as well too. We're going to go through the names now and the ones that we're going to discuss. But for those two golden tickets, which are the ones that you can only get one choice, but which would be your priority or main choice that you'd want to see or see in the opposite corner to Anthony Joshua? Those names are as follows: Tyson Fury, Joe Parker, Daniel Dubois, Agit Kabayel, or Wardley slash Atama. So those are the names we're going to run through, and you can give me your poll vote by the form of the vote in the chat, and as well too by your comments as well in the chat, and I'll read them. But that is their current state of play. I would suggest that it would be a tough fight for specifically Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury. Whilst Tyson Fury has taken a number of big shots in the last few fights of his career, you've never seen him. You never suggest, or at least the suggestion about Tyson not being at the peak of his powers has only recently come. Of course, he's shifted his style, and that means I would suggest that that means he maybe couldn't go back to that the fleet feet bouncing on his toes style that he was of once before, and that's understandable. That's you can understand why that was, because as you get on an age as a fighter, you can't maintain that. It's difficult to. So he's had to adapt his style, and Tyson and Anthony are sort of mirror images of that same issue. Anthony Joshua came in as a destructive force, and then molded his style to become more of a boxer and trying to beat his opponents through boxing as opposed to just finding that one big destructive knockout. And then the mirror image with Tyson Fury is that he was the boxer who was boxing and jiving his way, and it isn't boxing jive and such, but he's using more of the fundamentals. But Tyson was a bit more of the elusive type of style, and then he shifted to be more of a destructive fighter, looking to land that big right hand and get that knockout and get them out of there as quick as he possibly could. Going into the chat right now, Chris A says, all right, well, he doesn't want to see any of these fighters in the opposite corner to Anthony Joshua. He says, don't understand why. I'm sorry, but he should retire. With so much money on the table, you would you get why a fighter of Anthony Joshua's stature wouldn't want to retire, because there's still money to get when fighters in fights that are still able to get, and you're only one or two fights away from a situation where the belts might fragment, or because Usyk versus Dubois, how many fights does Usyk have left? Usyk has said himself that he wants to have two fights: this Daniel Dubois fight, or then Fury again, or even Anthony Joshua again. That will mean that if it's Fury again or Anthony Joshua again, neither of them are in positions to hold a world title. So a belt or two might have to be vacated. If it's Daniel Dubois, then Daniel Dubois holds the belts, and Queensby hold all the um, fighters who are in positions of ranked one or mandatory or hold interim or whatever the case is. But you'd also think that Tyson Fury could find himself in a position to have a fight with Daniel Dubois. So he might only be that one fight away. And Daniel Dubois as well was just last one big fight and fashion and to Joshua an opportunity. That's where those kind of things can be made and politicked, and opportunities can arise for anti Joshua, which is why you probably wouldn't want to retire right now. And of course, the money that is on the table for uh, that the fighter. Martin Mulligan says Fury or retire for me. And Untouchable says Fury needs to man up and face Anthony Joshua. One second, I've just got a thingy here. Let me just read this. So just for the poll that's coming up again before it comes out, is we're asking you guys who is going to, sorry, who would you like to see get one of the opportunities to take on Anthony Joshua? Tyson Fury, Joseph Parker, Daniel Dubois, Moses Atama, Agit Kabayel, Fabio Wardley, and Moses Atama. So those are the options that are coming up shortly in the poll. Make sure you vote for one of them. And Untouchable says Fury needs to man up and face Anthony Joshua. He's not scared of fighting Joshua, but he is 100% scared of losing to him. That is why he has been ducking him for years. How many of you guys in the chat believe that Tyson Fury is ducking Anthony Joshua? I can completely understand why a fighter, when you've had a fight for so many years talked about, and it was sort of the situation with Amir Khan in a way. Amir didn't seem to want to give um, Kell Brook the opportunity to fight him, and only took it by Amir's admission. He had to be talked away from the ledge of not of jumping out of that fight into getting the fight made by his wife, who said, "Look, it's a real legacy fight, and you've always given the fans big fights, big entertainment. You can't leave without giving them this one fight, whatever it happens to be." And maybe that conversation, maybe that decision to take the fight should have happened a few years earlier, or more from a Amir Khan perspective. But Amir never seemed to want to give his rival that opportunity, but it happened. Fury might feel the same, that now that he hasn't reached that promised land of undisputed, that he wouldn't want to have a defeat to anti Joshua on his ledger, and even a small chance of that happening might be one that he wouldn't want to face or allow. But that is a real reach for me to think of that, because I think Fury and his team would understand or look at it at the status that you just lost to Alexander Usyk. You've not slipped loads. You've not. There were tough fights, sure, both of them, and you've had tough fights with Deontay Wilder, but you haven't gone out the way that other rivals have gone out. So you'd still be the favorite in that fight. You still have your faculties. You're still moving at the highest level you can right now. How much of a risk is that fight against the, if there is a ego balance on the other side of it, how much of that is, how much of a jeopardy is that to take that you were defeated by your rival? I don't know how much of that is a factor for Tyson Fury. So I don't think he's scared particularly. I think it's a fight he will welcome. It's more of just a case of being. I think Tyson definitely wants to be the A side of that fight. I think Tyson wants to be paid accordingly for that fight. And I think that's more the case of getting those two to agree on a deal um, for that fight to take place. Custard System says, good to see you, Custard System. Definitely cannot retire from a Dubois defeat. I still rate Joshua highly. I would put him against anybody. Yeah, how many of you as well think that Anthony Joshua will win a world title again? That's what I want to hear in the chat as well too. Big Chungus says, yeah. Big Chungus. Did I meet Big Chungus? I think I met Big Chungus, didn't I? Or was it Lovely Coconuts? I can't remember. But good to see you, Big Chungus, nonetheless. I think Tyson Fury should retire. He's already beaten everyone and unretired twice. Go out now before rematches start looking like reunion gigs no one asked for. An Untouchable says Fury is not even the best heavyweight in the UK, let alone of this era or all time, as he claimed for years. I mean, a lot of that is hype and promotion, and Tyson Fury has been one of the best to have ever held the microphone, in my opinion. And he certainly sold himself and sold big nights and sold big fights and delivered in a lot of entertaining fights as well too. Fury not being the best heavyweight in the UK right now, who would you say that is then? Who would you rate as the number one heavyweight in the UK? Because I'd still call it. No, I mean Dubois holds a world title. That's a tough toss up, whether it is Fury or Daniel Dubois. I think by virtue of holding a world title, you have to give it to Daniel Dubois. But for the amount of wins that he's got on his record right now, uh, it's an interesting debate. I can see arguments for both sides of the coin. I think Dubois holding the world title right now probably does edge it to Daniel if that's the way you're going with it. I thought maybe when you thought about when you were offering that statement, maybe it might have been Atama you were alluding to, but Dubois holds the world title. Maybe he has to have be given the respect of being the number one in the UK because he does hold one. Next comment comes from, let's have a look. And then touch what Fury number one, Daniel Dubois number two. Because the system says if Joshua stays with Ben Davison, cannot be against Wardley or Atama. So, well, this is the thing. So when I asked Frank Warren, he said essentially that's the problem, that's the issue. Those are the type of fights they'd like to make right now. For Atama specifically was the one they mentioned. They said that Anti Joshua would be a great fight for him next, and they would have no issues with putting him in or Fabio Wardley. But they're both, all three of them are in the same camp. So that fight's never going to happen unless one of them were to leave the camp. Um, and then, of course, they then have to agree to fight with each other. So, could that happen? Right now, it seems like a complete non starter, but just playing with it on a case of it could happen. I wonder how you feel you would, or which fight would you want to see in the pecking order of the fights that are available. Jack Dutton on the 45 says, good to see you in here, Jack Dutton. Overwhelmingly, I'd like him to face Fury. I've heard that Wilder at the end of the year might happen. Yeah, I mean, this Joshua, if you're a conspiracy theorist, if you're trying to put pieces together, you're kind of thinking that there's a lot of hold up right now for heavyweights such as Anthony Joshua, and the landscape is going to shift significantly at the end of this Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois rematch for the undisputed heavyweight titles very soon. Are you waiting for that to happen to see what happens and where the chips may fall? Are you waiting for Deontay Wilder to return to get a win on his ledger and a knockout, and then he can scream that he was back and then put those together because there's still a bit of currency left between AJ and Wilder, and lapsed fans or fans have been following the heavyweight division will understand that that was a fight that has significant interest, and you could still stir up significant interest in that fight. I think, even though neither are at the peak of their powers right now. So is that the weight that's happening? And either can proclaim that for a victory over each other, that they don't earn an opportunity towards a world title, and they're back again to conquer the division once more. That's kind of how these things sort of go when they have wins over each other. So maybe that is the hold up right now for specifically both those two fighters. A says A and nothing more. What a name to be, just the letter A. Triple D should fight AJ after Usyk. Why does Anti Joshua, in your opinion, deserve the opportunity against Daniel Dubois if he beats Alexander Usyk? What do you think about that one? Cuz System says Joshua against Dubois for me. Cuz System votes Daniel Dubois. And how likely do you think that Daniel Dubois would, sorry, Joshua would get the revenge victory over Daniel Dubois? Let's park the conversation in the chat there for now as we move on to our next topic conversation. That's the next fighter, and that is Joe Parker. The first fight between Anthony Joshua and Joe Parker, could it be worse than it was before? It wasn't a good fight the first time around, and in part, a lot of the blame was shifted towards the inexperienced Italian referee, and it wasn't a good display. There wasn't a lot of action. There wasn't a lot of shots landed between either fighter. There wasn't a lot to really talk about that fight, and it's one of the AJ fights that, even though Parker has stayed strong within the heavyweight division, he's fluctuated between fights and had some wins, had some losses, but maintained his position and maintained his hunger within the heavyweight division to capture a world title again. That fight isn't remembered very fondly, and with good reason. But Joe Parker has been on a resurgence since. He's linked up with Andy Lee, and he seems to have strung together some good wins. And although Joe Parker seems to be in with Derek Chisora again for a rematch, for a rematch between those two, could we see Joe Parker and Anthony Joshua fight again? And how different would that be? I think it's a real possibility. I think Anthony Joshua, being one of the money men in the division, for someone like Joe Parker, he'd be looking at Anthony Joshua and saying, one, I can bag a lot of money. Two, I can beat this guy. I'm on the upward trajectory. Anthony Joshua isn't on the upward trajectory. I'm a different fighter right now with a lot of momentum. I've learned how to defeat different stars. I've learned to back myself in the ring. I've now molded and gelled with my new trainer and Andy Lee. And the fight the second time around, I'm smarter to any tricks, any ways of diffusing my abilities, and I can come back and make a good fist of it the second time round. For AJ, I would suggest that AJ would also look at this as a fight where he says, I've beat this guy before, and even though he's on a resurgence, I know how to beat him. So there'll be a lot of confidence from Anthony Joshua to take on the fight with Joe Parker. But how much money does it represent to Anthony Joshua from that perspective financially? And what is the reward for it? Because if Joe Parker doesn't hold a world title, then what does it mean for someone who's looking for that Fury fight or a world title? That's what Anthony Joshua said at the start of the year when he was over in Africa, I believe it was. Those are the two opportunities that he was keenly looking for. And if Joe Parker certainly isn't Tyson Fury, Joe Parker right now certainly doesn't hold a world title. But who would you back to win in a fight between the two of them, Joe Parker or Anthony Joshua? Let me know in the chat as well. But that would be a real intriguing fight. I think it's a lot closer than people maybe think it would be, given Joe Parker's resurgence. But it's a good fighting prospect and one that I'm sure both fighters would like to get back. Let's jump back into the chat and see what you guys are saying. Big Boy Garm says Fury Joshua is a prize fighter, and the biggest prize on offer would be Fury. But what about the other option? Is two fights left potentially for Anti Joshua? What's the other one, do you think? Darrow O'Malley says Parker is being lined up for Allen, if rumours are to be believed. Wardley and Atama are both trained by Davison. Miller, Wilder probably makes sense if he's out this year. So first of all, Dave Allen, that Parker versus Dave Allen fight is it's a big jump from Johnny Fisher all the way up to Joe Parker. And I get why Dave wants to take that opportunity because it seems like Dave is sort of kind of reconciling with the step to either go for the British title and try to win that, and how viable that is against who it would be. Would it be Jamie TKV? Could it be Fraser Clark? Right now, it doesn't seem to be David Adelaide, who's gone for Philip Hergovich. So it would seem that the British title is vacated. I don't think there's an official confirmation of that just yet, but that would seem to be the flowing order of things. But could Dave Allen go and fight Jamie TKV? How tough of that is a fight, and how possible is it for him to win a British title? Or, and that would be for a bit more than usual British title money because it's heavyweights and where it could land potentially, or you look to try and get the biggest and best opportunities. And if you're in against Joe Parker, then you're going to command a higher fee than you would for the British title against Jamie TKB. So down the line, does he want to say he's fought for a British title, maybe lost, maybe won, whatever, or does he want to say he fought for even an interim title, or whatever the case is, against a former world champion, and was whatever happens, rock his chances with it, and made a heck of a lot of money off the back of it. So it's a it's one where you understand the reasons for it, but you don't particularly give Dave, with respect, he's in the uphill battle. That's the best and most politest way to say it. But being brutal about it, it's a real tough ask for Dave Allen to win that fight against Joe Parker. And Jack Dutton says, "I heard Parker's got Chisora next. Nothing confirmed on that, but I mean there was lots of whispers about what Joe Parker would be doing next, and there was the ear to the ground was picking up on Joe Parker being in with Dylan White. Dylan White's taking the opportunity to take on Moses Atama, which is in itself a little bit confusing. But if Derek Chisora is saying on Talk Sport that he's turned down 2 million to take on Moses Atama, what do we think Dylan White is being offered? It'd be money similar to or around that at the least. So you can see why Dylan has taken that decision, and it's a good opportunity. Like Frank doesn't miss a trick really because there's an absence of a name on the list of Moses Tama on the way up. It's a recognizable name by British boxing fans and further in Dylan White, former world title challenger in Dylan White, and one that at least recently hasn't looked to be anywhere near the form of Dylan White when he's been at his best in previous fights. So it's a real good trick. It's a real good move is a better word for from the Warrens for Atama, and they've fronted the money for it. And we'll see if that fight does materialize. But it's certainly an interesting one on both sides of the coin. Ed Jones says easy should be Tyson and Joshua. Jack Dutton says, I don't think Tyson is ducking AJ. I think he's trying to build the demand for the fight so he can possibly negotiate a better deal for the fight. Let me just see where is it? If I can grab it quickly. I'm going to grab for you guys an update on the poll. The poll is as follows. Who would you like to see get one of the two golden tickets for a fight with Anthony Joshua? That is Tyson Fury, Daniel Dubois, Joe Parker, Agit Kabayel, Fabio Wardley, or Moses Atama. Those are the current runners and riders, or another. Others' names have been mentioned in the chat. Uh, Jarrell Miller's been mentioned. Zhile Zhang is one that's been often linked with Anthony Joshua and is not there on the list either. Right now, in the lead is Tyson Fury with a whopping 62% of the votes. Coming up a strong second is a rematch between Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois. Coming in third place is Joe Parker at 12%, and Moses Talma. Moses Talma at the bottom of the list with 6% of the votes. So don't forget to put those votes in, um, or provide an option and give your reasons why as well too. Moving into the third choice, and that is Daniel Dubois, currently holding one of the world titles and about to be in for all four of the belts if he can pick up the victory against Alexander Usyk at the second time of asking. That is Triple D Daniel Dynamite Dubois. He's taking on Alexander Usyk. Now, if he gets the victory against Alexander Usyk the second time of asking, he has the options available and would probably be very much high on his list to take on an anti Joshua or a Tyson Fury if there's not a rematch clause, of course, for that undisputed fight between the two of them coming up at Wembley. That would be a fight that would sell out Wembley again, especially when it's got the tag. Although everyone's seen how the first fight materialize, this time round it's for the undisputed heavyweight belts, and that brings its own jeopardy and momentum into the fight, and the feeling as well that Anthony Joshua did have Daniel Dubois hurt before Anthony Joshua unfortunately was sent crashing down to the canvas, but with another opportunity, might he find himself in a moment where he could capitalize upon that the second time of asking. I think Anthony Joshua will be absolutely ready and willing to take that fight with Daniel. I think you'll see it as a revenge mission, an opportunity for all the belts are on the line, the opportunity to become undisputed in one fight as opposed to multiple fights and get revenge over the soon to be or looking to be one of the flag bearers in the next generation of British heavyweights. Daniel Dubois is, I'd say, currently is. I shouldn't say soon to be. Definitely is holding that flag right now, alongside others too. But he's certainly deserving of that accolade. AJ would certainly, I would expect, take that opportunity and want to have that fight. Daniel Dubois, again, knowing that that both Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury are the money in the division, alongside his growing stature as the money as well, too, would want to take that fight. So I think that's a real possibility that fight could happen, and both of those would look at as more so Dubois in the equation, considering he's beaten him the first time round, as options on the table, strong options on the table, because of how the first fight went and because of what's on the line and because of the interest it would generate in the UK specifically. So I think of the three options, given that so far, three options so far, but given that if Fury is retired and he's out of the scene, that is the most obvious option to take of the names named. Let me know what you think in the chat, and jumping back into the chat if I can pick up exactly where I was. We gonna say here, Fury ain't got that motivation, says Big Boy Garms. Them early morning runs are a thing of the past. Fury, Joshua, both over the peak. Uh, Dara Amali says Parker would 120, 108, Allen or Chisora. Not sure who he faces next. I think Atama irons out Daniel Dubois and Tyson Fury right now. Big call from an untouchable. I think Atama irons out Daniel Dubois and Fury right now. Big, big call. I You don't deny the talent of Moses Atama, absolutely, but just the experience and the fights aren't there, and he's not gone the distance either, full championship distance either. You'd always kind of want to call or be on the, you want to drive the bandwagon as opposed to be on one of the seats in the back. But I think there's been so many prospects, there's so many fighters who have been in positions. The heavyweight division has always been one where you're not there until you're there. And Tyson Fury, if you see, is an example, who was one of the fighters at the top of the tree, vying for that undisputed heavyweight title. Tyson, when he first came in, was sort of seen. He was mocked. He was laughed at. Didn't He was a bit of a novelty act? Look at this big, gangly heavyweight who moves awkwardly. It was kind of seen as at the start different sort of style for a heavyweight. One that punched himself in the face as well too. This is someone to laugh at as opposed to just admire. And then he turned that around really quick. Tyson did, and earned the respect of the writers and boxing fans as well. So, but by getting there, and until you get there, it's I'm just hesitant at the moment to jump on that bandwagon just yet. But that's not to say he doesn't have the talent that everyone is seeing, saying that he has, and certainly I've seen it up close and personal. And I've seen specifically, I can say that I have seen Daniel Dubois and Moses Atalma spar each other before, and it was a very, very interesting watch. Maybe in the future, if that fight does materialize, I will talk about it and let you guys know what actually happened in that spar. Maybe hold that thought, watch this space, as Danny Gilfillan would do. And Untouchable also says, we just need to see Itama chin tested and for someone to take him into deep waters. Yeah, that's it. To test his heart. That's exactly it. And it's not to say that a fighter like Moses Itama doesn't have that, but you always need to. Great matchmaking means that that's evidence before you get to the moment where it needs to be solid. Everything needs to be there, because once it gets found out, or if those things haven't been found out before you've got there, then you're onto a real problem. Big Boy Garm says Parker's name doesn't carry weight. Parker needs to fight these hyped up kids or go for the belt. Yeah, I think in the sense of Parker's name doesn't carry weight, in the sense of financially, it's not as big as some of the names on this list, but I think he still carries currency in that he's a former world champion, and he probably has the most momentum outside of Daniel Dubois right now. I think Kabayel has momentum. Wardley still has good momentum, but it sort of slowed down a little bit off the back of how the fight was going with Honey. But he got a knockout win, which is a great way to do it. So he still has that momentum. Kabayel momentum as well too. But Joe Parker has had those ups and downs and kept going, and has since kept going up. Um, I think he is the greatest wind beneath his wings right now. Jack Dutton says, no rush with Atama, though. Good point. White will be decent test for Atama and a step up in quality. I just don't know how much Dylan White has left. A lot to prove for Dylan White off the back of Ebenezer Tete. There's all sorts of ways that you can create logic out of an illogical sport in boxing, but the way I kind of view it is the overriding image for me when I think about Dylan White right now is Dylan White looked so sloppy, rough, out of form, out of shape against Ebenezer Tete over in Gibraltar. And he had Fraser Clark, who came in and made short work of Ebenezer Tete. So where does that leave the position of Dylan White right now? Maybe it was just a real off night and a lack of training and a lack of taking the opponent seriously. But the left hook didn't seem to be as powerful. The footwork didn't seem to be as good. The jab didn't seem to be as on point as possible. A lot to prove for Dylan White in against someone who's proving every point so far. So we'll see. Big Boy Garm says, and let's be real, the Saudi season is finished. I don't think it ever really finishes. It goes from like Saudi season to Jeddah season to all sorts. There are bigger things going on over there. Homeboy staying home, I think, in 26 forward. Interesting. We'll see. Um, just joined and only 5 likes. Thunder Road, strike of thunder, and all this heat rains down. Chat, don't slack. Hit the thumbs up. Much appreciated. I really appreciate the thumbs up as well too, especially as I'm on my one here. That's what's driving me. The thumbs up drives me up. The thumbs up doesn't go anywhere, but it just definitely is the fuel to the fire to keep going as we're halfway through nearly of this week's Seconds Out Live. Jackson says, what do you mean? Riyadh season just getting started. Indeed. I was just over there. Terence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford. The launch press conference happened. I was there in attendance filming it for you. I'm going to be there for the third press conference in Las Vegas as well, too, alongside Jake Paul versus Chavez Jr. Come on, boxing hopefully is ramping up. Someone's got the foot on the pedal, and we're ramping up and getting some big fights. We sure do need some big fights amongst a little bit of a down period right now. Darren Melly says WBO mandatory has to be next. Can't see Joshua getting a shot. Manny Pacquiao's jumping in a shot with Mario Barras for the WBC title after 5 years absence. Shots can be manufactured, it seems, in boxing. Parker is WBO mandatory, says Jack as well, too. Jack Dunn on the 45 is a response. Something tells me politics will get in the way of the entertainment. Asgir, good to see you in here. Fraser Clark cannot be ignored. The way Fraser is training sparring is unreal. Certainly good to see Fraser bounce back. Like I mentioned there about the way he dispatched of Ebenezer Tete, I thought that he did exactly what was needed from him off the back of doubts that people would have. I've certainly raised my doubts with Fraser Clark, and he's answered them in the best way possible. So more power, absolutely, to Fraser. And if he can find himself climbing that ladder and climbing up an opportunity, taking the British title and going further than he's done very well for himself. So all power to Fraser if he can manufacture those opportunities too. As he is also offering, I like to see AJ face someone like Tom Schwartz. That so Eddie has always come out recently and said that this comeback fight or the comeback opportunities aren't there for him anymore. And Tom Schwartz, I think, would represent a comeback fight. That comeback build, just I don't think there's room for that anymore, unless it's like a real fast, quick turnaround. And AJ doesn't really do those real fast, quick turnarounds. The talk was about getting him to have that momentum in 3 fights this year, or the last year previous, and looking to get that fulfilled. And that's what we're building back to it. And that didn't work either. I'm not sure if there's timeline for that and just the opportunity to be in a big fight like a Deontay Wilder or a Tyson Fury or a Daniel Dubois. I don't know how much opportunity there is or how much want there is from those that are in play to make those type of fights to facilitate those either. And Untouchable says, any updates on why Usyk and Krasik split? No, no updates at all. I did reach out to Alex Krasik and asked him if he'd like to come on and speak about it. No response as of yet. Maybe he doesn't want to. It was well within his rights not to. That's his prerogative for sure. But he's put out a statement to say that they've split. Usyk does have his own Usyk promotions, and Alex Krasik was part of KT promotions. Maybe it's a case of, as Alexander Usyk looks to close the curtain on his career, making as much of or keeping the money in house as possible, and that's just part of business. If he doesn't need the promotional arm to be done by a third party, and he can do it himself, then you keep as much money as you can in house. So maybe that's the case with it, but I don't know that to be the case as substantiated. But you can, with boxing and the way things are, that's a conclusion you could draw from it. Coming off of an injury, so let's give the man a chance. Sure, I don't disagree either. I just don't know whether the appetite is there for a Thomas Schwartz fight. It's sort of like a collision course. Like when they do the fight before the fight, I remember seeing Nathan Cleverly and Tony Bellew box on the same card before they had the rematch with each other, and that was called Collision Course. Maybe you do that. And Tyson and AJ both have run out of fights before they fight each other, and you sell the fight that way, and you have to rate the races that way. I just don't know who's going to facilitate that and put that on. There was talk though that both AJ and Fury would be on the same card, and that never materialized, did it? Maybe one day that might do, and that's a way to do it. We want the best Fury, the best AJ, and may the best man win. No one can argue with that, Asgi. Absolutely agree with you completely. Moving on to the next fight, and that is Agit Kabayel, the man on the mission, the man on a lot of momentum. Aside from Joe Parker, I think Agit Kabayel is the heavyweight in the division who has assimilated, aside from Joe Parker, the most amount of momentum in real impressive wins in the heavyweight division. Somewhat, you can't say he's come out of nowhere, but he's certainly not had the spotlight that his talent has commanded. And there are kind of there is the feeling within the boxing fraternity, or people have said that he doesn't really need boxing. He's got a lot of businesses outside of boxing that are doing really well. So they've been able to kind of just coast along. But even with that coasting, it seems like they found the right time to really push on the gas. And he's really benefited from Riyadh season and the opportunities that Riyadh season has provided. In with Arslanbek Makhmudov, who's seen as both of these are seen as two bogeyman fighters, and he proved that Arslanbek Makhmudov wasn't ready and wasn't a bogeyman either in finishing Makhmudov, real body assault, and which seemed to be the real trademark from Kabayel, body assault, facilitating his wins and stoppages. Then the fight with Frank Sanchez, who was heavily taped, not taped, but he had like a support bandage around his knee. But was it a limited Frank Sanchez? I think even if it was Frank Sanchez at the peak of his powers, he was in with a Kabayel who wouldn't be stopped either. And again, picked his shots perfectly and stopped Frank Sanchez in the seventh round. And then against Zhile Zhang too, the power punching Zhile Zhang. A lot said about Zhile Zhang's gas tank, but he was able to delete that gas tank even further. And knowing that a feeling was right within the boxing media was that this fight could spin on a sixpence, in that the first 5-6 rounds were had the best chance for Zhile Zhang, and then anything after was all Agit Kabayel. And to be fair, Kabayel just stepped on the assault and even took those rounds away from Zhile Zhang. But his best opportunity was to try and land that big shot, and he did land that big shot in the fifth round. He just didn't have enough to capitalize on that from Kabayel, and Kabayel showed enough of chin and heart to get back up and finish the job. But he was smothered. He stayed inside the pocket, stayed inside the distance. Smothered the distance from Zhang and just assaulted the body. And that was everything for Kabayel, who captured the WBC interim world heavyweight title. Now, would this be a fight that would be one of interest for Anthony Joshua? I would think that this isn't a fight that AJ would take. One, considering he doesn't hold a world title as of right now. Two, a fighter on the ascendancy, momentum, relatively fresh as well. Two, and three, risk and reward with that. He doesn't command a big name right now. He does have the backing, it seems, of Riyadh Season, which might command a heavy fee, which might mitigate that. But outside of that, that doesn't seem to be the case. And four, these two have shared countless rounds, as has been reported. Cabello's been part of AJ's camps for many a year. So these two have knowledge of each other. So AJ will know acutely just how successful he was in those sparring, and he can then translate that into what might happen. You think if AJ does take the fight, then he's very confident that he get the victory over Cabello and feels like he knows all of his game and can counter that and get the victory over him. But those kind of things I think would weigh against Cabello, and Cabello will certainly take the fight with AJ again off of the base of momentum and AJ being the money. But is it also a fight that boxing fans are particularly calling for? I think boxing fans want to see Cabello get his opportunity at a world title, but not specifically against Anthony Joshua, against someone like a world title holder in Usyk or Dubois, or even Joe Parker would be a good fight for a world title. So I would say that particularly of the names listed, this would probably be at the bottom of the interest pile. But let me know what you guys think in the chat as well too. Let me see what you guys are saying in the chat as well. As he comes back and says Moses is ready for a world title now. Interesting. Certainly, just about missed the Mike Tyson record, but for a British champion, he could smash that record. So we'll see if he does it. Jack Dutton says Tom Schwartz for AJ. Are you sure? Aski says Agit is high risk, low reward. Agreed. Custer System says Eamon, you did a very good interview with Dubois camp in Portugal when he fought Usyk. I appreciate that. It was Spain though, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Any chance of you doing another one for the rematch? I don't think so, unfortunately. We haven't been able to facilitate that right now with Daniel Dubois. We do have a good we have a brilliant relationship with what I should say with Don Charles and the team there. Don has been very forthcoming and open with his gym and access whenever we have called upon it. So very grateful to Don for that, and that hasn't changed. That hasn't wavered. Whether he's had Chisora or Dubois, Don is very much being very open and accommodating for that. But Raheem was in for the last camp, but we haven't had anyone in for this camp as of yet. I don't think I will be the one to do that because I'm covering the Manny Pacquiao versus Mario Barros fight. Mario Barros versus Manny Pacquiao, I should say, as he's the world champion. And Raheem is covering the undisputed fight in the UK. So if we do, then it will be Raheem, I believe, who will get that. But I will try nonetheless if that hasn't been floated out as of yet and see if we can get that locked in. Especially as well, Stan Dubois. I think Stan would be another interesting listen if we can lock down Stan Dubois to a long conversation about the fight coming up and on the back end of it too. So hopefully we can get those delivered for you guys as well. But thanks again, Chris. I appreciate it. MB says not many body punchers in the heavyweight division over the years. Yet a lost start by all means, and Agit Kabayel has been able to pick up on the fruits of that being something that has been neglected. Dylan White was someone who was doing a lot of it in recent years, but not to. I'd certainly put and Derek Chisora as well, real good body puncher. I'd suggest Ruiz. I think was pretty good. Um, who else would hit the body? If I can think of a lot more, think of more names as they come, I will do. But those are some that come to the top of my mind. As he says, everyone talks about that shot that AJ took from Dubois. What about it though specifically? Trust me, Moses knocks them all out. Big call from Aski. So that's Kabayel. The other two options that I'm going to couple together are Fabio Wardley and Moses Atama. We already have a call here that Moses Atama knocks them all out. Remember, there is a poll here in the chat. Who do you want to see fight Anthony Joshua? Two bites at the cherry. Two people will get the golden tickets, but you can only vote for one of them. In a nearly unsurmountable lead is Tyson Fury. Moses Atama pulls in at last place. In at second place is Daniel Dubois. And in third place, Joe Parker. Make sure that you get your votes in. I will not refer back to the poll until the end of the show. So get them in and I'll read them out. But right now, you all want to see Tyson Fury. It's almost locked in that this is the winner. But who would be second and third place? Let's see who will be there at the end of the show. So the last call, Fabio Wardley and Moses Time. I'm grouping these together because they're sort of in similar positions right now. Although Italma hasn't captured the British title, he's certainly been rushed well above that, especially if the rankings are anything to say for it. And they want to, it seems, pushing for a world title opportunity as soon as possible. So, foregoing those steps along the ladder because of the talent that demands it. Um, but one of these two, of course, they train with. Ben said many would have done. Ben said many. Don't know what you mean just here, Aski, but taking out, of course, the fact that they're all in the same gym right now. Let's say that it's a ideal world for this scenario. Who would you want to see in if it's Wardley or Italma? But Fabio Wardley come off the back of a emphatic KO finish against Justice Hunu when the tide was well against him and on his way to losing his Portman Road homecoming in Ipswich. Found that big punch, found that big opportunity, found that big right hand to land on Justice and got the victory on the night and is looking for another big opportunity. Now, you'd think that a couple of things with Fabio is if he wants to win a world title, if he wants to get an opportunity like that, does he want to does he want to assess the scene and see how the fights fall out? Does he want to get in for a world title? Um, how does him and the team look at the way the Honey fight went and assess where Wardley is right now? And a lot of money will be on the table for Fabio, but is it worth jumping up right now for that? Is what they'll probably be asking. And if the money's there, that they probably will. What heavyweight wouldn't do that? But there's a lot of questions to be answered off of the back of that Justice Hunu fight. Would Anthony Joshua look at that fight with Fabio? I think so. I think again, if they're not at the same gym, again they are, but for the purposes of this, hypothetically, I think that'd be a fight that interests both Wardley and Anthony Joshua, and would be of significant British interest as well. But there are bigger opportunities on the table specifically for Anthony Joshua alongside Fabio Wardley, who would love a chance, you imagine, to fight Anthony Joshua if he was at a different gym, but would also love the chance to would want to significantly raise his chances to beat him. Maybe they would have a fight in between. I think it's a good fight for both of them and a winnable fight for both of them as well. But Moses Talma is the other one specifically that was mentioned by Frank Warren. And when I asked Frank Warren about it, he said he would have no problem making that fight. He'd put him in there in a heartbeat. Is it one of the Frank Warren's lines right now? Is that he said he'd make that fight in a heartbeat. He seems supremely confident in Moses Talma's abilities and talent in the ring. And again, if they're not at the same gym, hypothetically, that fight would be heavily pushed for by Frank Warren, it seems. Would it be one that Anthony Josh would be interested in? It seems like from Dylan White's situation, with the perplexity that a lot of boxing fans, pundits, fighters, Derek Chisora had said that on Talksport, don't take that fight. It's going to be, in his words, attempted murder because of he thought he was 27 and he's actually 20 years old. And this guy is exhibiting that talent at this age already. It's not a wise move for someone like Dylan White to take that fight. But for the money that's on the table, that's what's making them. That's the push or the jump towards that fight. And could they find a certain amount of money, a certain figure to tempt someone like AJ into a fight with Moses Atama, and not that AJ wouldn't welcome a fight with Moses, but it's also the want to get paid for someone who hasn't put himself, who hasn't got the profile um, or the spotlight as AJ has. That commands its own fee and a recompense for it on the other side of it. So, is there that money left? Is there that money there for someone who doesn't particularly need it and can fashion their own opportunities? I don't think so. I don't think that that would be something that AJ particularly needs right now. And because of the fights that are on the table that will command better spotlight and maybe even bigger money, probably even bigger money in a Deontay Wilder, in a Tyson Fury, in a Daniel Dubois. It's one of those as well. Like, where do you go off of the back of a defeat to someone like a Wardley or someone like a Tama who are not proven at that level either? It's a long road back because defeats to others, maybe not to Wilder right now because he doesn't have the stature or position where he was once before, but someone like a Joe Parker, a Dubois, or a Fury, there's there's you can still push that or spin that in a position where that fighter can get back onto the saddle, can walk back onto the road towards the top because it's they've lost to a higher level positioned fighter right now. And Moses certainly is one who's talented but isn't in the profile of those either. So that's why I think that that fight is unlikely to happen. But you would think that with how things are going, with the confidence a lot of people have in Moses Tama. I don't even think they've sparred. I don't know if Anti Joshua and Moses Tama have sparred before, which would be an interesting conversation if there was ever a spar had between them. But with the way things are going, it might it might be that the former unified heavyweight champion might be advised not to take that fight for reasons of financial and, of course, prospects as well. But again, on the other side, the flip side of that, Moses Tama hasn't had the experience that Anti Joshua has had, and Anti Joshua, even in, and this is where in a lot of the times, I think Anti Joshua doesn't get a lot of credit for what he has done, what he's achieved, and his spirit and his heart as well. I think it's quite easy. Boxing media finds it quite easy to throw a stick at AJ, and sometimes I find that unfair. And specifically, what I'd say to people in that moment to like evidence that is, even in the face of the tide turning against him against Daniel Dubois, he still found a big shot against Daniel that clipped him, sent him wobbly, and but for a moment, a wrong choice, and it was a very wrong choice. But for that wrong choice, he found himself on the canvas when he could have in another opportunity, another take. If you could ever have retakes of fights, in another take, he might have been able to capitalize on that a bit more or recover himself. But he was still looking to find that big shot, still looking to find a way to win, even though he'd crashed down to the canvas a couple of times beforehand. So fair play to the guy. And if you ever question his heart and desire or want to continue in the sport, I think that moment proves where AJ's mindset and mentality is that, and that should be credited and not forgotten or not spoken about either when it comes to AJ and where he is right now. But those are the options. Let me jump into the chat right now before I close the poll. Um, here we go. So, Asketea says Ben Davison has the hardest job in boxing, always criticized, but a phenomenal coach person. One thing I like to say about Ben is that I've not been one to throw the stick at him either. I think he's a good coach who's proving himself as well and needs his opportunities to prove themselves. I think he does get a lot of unfair criticism and will prove himself to be a good coach. I would love it to have an opportunity to speak with Ben Davison on an interview. Ben's a bit more elusive than I would appreciate him to be. Of course, there's no prerogative to give anyone an interview, but it would be great to, in the same vein where Joe Gallagher, Don Charles, Shane McGuigan, Mark Tibbs have opened their doors to me at the gym so I can find out and learn a bit about what they do. I'm very alien to at least seeing it more than on the skin deep surface level of what Ben Davison and his team do for all the credit that they get for making plans and scenarios and game plans and such. I'd love to be able to have a one-to-one conversation and see that in effect itself as opposed to just hearing about it. But of course, those are that has to be facilitated and hasn't as of yet, but would love that opportunity for sure. Heavyweight boxing is at a fantastic place. That's the beauty. One punch can change the game. That's what makes us boxing fans. You just don't know. System says, I do not agree with you, Asgater, about Ben being a phenomenal coach. Too analytical. Best method of boxing is the one which is able to cope with the most attacks using the least number of movements. Less means more. Bit of debate going on in the chat. Jack Dutton says, if Atama gets past Dillian, then I think he'll get a world title shot in 27. Why wait to 27? Asgater says, reason I say this cuss is Ben understands the boxer, their mindset, etc. Look at Fury, look at Lee Wood, look at Wardley, look at Masood, look at Billy Joe. People forgot about when the boxer struggles and Ben makes that adjustment and reminds them of the game plan, and then boom, they knock their opponent out. MB says Moses would destroy him. I think that means Anthony Joshua. Consistent says what happens with AJ. Let's talk about prospects. Demar Thomas, Leo Tang, Mark Ahonjo, Martin McDonough, and such. Remember the name Sean Haddart. Good to see you in here, Asgard Tear. We're also about to close out the show. We'll get the results of the poll before we move off of Seconds Out Live for this week. I'll be in uh, California for Jake Paul versus Chavez Jr. So I'll be bringing you all the content from there, but I'll leave off the closing remarks in a moment. So the end of the poll is as follows, and the results are as Vinny, the videographer back behind the scenes, is assimilating all those votes. He's counting them, he's recounting them, and he's recounting them again and recounting them. I think there must be a glitch in the system because they haven't come out just yet. I think Vinny's taking his time. Doesn't want any flubs live on Seconds Out to see to know what they were or what they weren't even. Who do you want to see fight Anti Joshua? Tyson Fury, unassailable lead, 68% of the votes. In second place was Daniel Dubois, the rematch, which ended the first fight emphatically. Joe Parker is at 10% of the votes, a rematch which didn't deliver the action that the fight with Daniel Dubois did. And Moses Atama in last place didn't shift at 6% of the votes. That is everything for this week's edition of Seconds Out Live. Appreciate it. I appreciate everyone tuning in and helping me through as well too. One man show. I know how Danny feels as well when he had the one man show now. So we've rode that same boat, Danny. But hopefully next week we'll have more than just myself here and more guests as well too accompanying. We did try and get a few guests on, but didn't manage to get them over the line, unfortunately. But yeah, Jake Paul versus Chavez Jr. Look out for that content as well in the following week as well. IBA will be in Turkey for the IBA pro fight between Albert Batagaziev and Jazza Dickens, with a number of big stars slated to be there as well. So hopefully some big interviews in the offing there as well. And of course, on top of any of the latest breaking news in boxing, we'll be delivering you those interviews too. So thank you once again to everyone in the chat for listening. Thank you for clicking the like button, subscribing, and following. And we'll see you guys on next week's edition of Seconds Out Live.